10 days later, the British gained another success when the Australian light cruiser HMAS Sydney sank the Italian cruiser Bartolomeo Colleone off the island of Crete. Mussolini's Mare Nostrum appeared to be little more than a boast, as the Royal Navy gained dominance across the Mediterranean despite the advanced age of most of the British ships and the fact that they were heavily outnumbered by the Italians. Rubbing salt into the wounds, the British garnered another spectacular success on August 22nd, when the Swordfish of 824 Squadron from HMS Eagle attacked Italian warships in Bamba Bay west of Tobruk, Libya. After refueling at a desert airstrip, 3 Swordfish took off from Sidi Barrani, led by Captain Ali Patch of the Royal Marines. They then unleashed their torpedoes at the 4 ships sheltering in Bamba Bay. Remarkably, all 4 ships, 2 submarines, a destroyer and a supply ship were sunk with just 3 torpedoes. While the British were beginning to demonstrate the value of naval air power, the Royal Navy received 2 new carriers named HMS Illustrious and HMS Formidable. Weighing 23,000 tons, they had a top speed of 31 knots, and were the first carriers built with armored flight decks. They were well equipped to survive against air attacks, but they could only carry up to 36 aircraft. HMS Illustrious was sent immediately to join the Mediterranean fleet, along with the battleship HMS Valiant. Both vessels were equipped with modern radar systems. There they joined the aircraft carrier Eagle and 2 battleships, substantially reinforcing the British fleet in the Mediterranean. In response, the Italians reinforced the fleet at Taranto with the Regia Marina's most powerful capital ships, including the newest battleships Littorio and Vittorio Veneto. Now that he had 2 carriers in the eastern Mediterranean, Admiral Cunningham decided to mount an aerial attack on the Italian fleet lurking in Taranto harbor. He ordered a plan for Operation Judgment. As the planning for the raid on the Italian fleet at Taranto began, Admiral Cunningham drew on the past experiences of one of his carrier captains. During World War I, Lieutenant Commander Arthur Lumley St. George Leicester had served at Taranto flying seaplanes and had been decorated by the Italians for his war service. By 1938, he was captain of the aircraft carrier HMS Furious serving in the Mediterranean. As an exercise, his Swordfish pilots trained repeatedly for night raids on defended harbors like Taranto. Leicester returned to the Mediterranean in 1940 as the Rear Admiral in charge of carrier operations and flew his flag aboard HMS Illustrious. In September, Leicester presented his plan to Admiral Cunningham in Alexandria, Egypt. It called for the carrier group HMS Eagle and HMS Illustrious to rendezvous off the Greek island of Cephalonia. Their 30 Swordfish aircraft were to attack Taranto in 2 waves from 2 different directions, 1 hour apart. Leicester knew that Taranto harbor was divided into 2 sections, the outer Mar Grande, where the major warships were moored, and the inner Mar Piccolo, where smaller vessels were kept. The Italians were well prepared for any attack. Their first line of defense was a series of 13 gigantic listening devices that could detect an aircraft 30 miles away. Around the port were 90 barrage balloons, 21 batteries of heavy anti-aircraft guns, 84 automatic cannons, and over 100 heavy machine guns. There were also 22 searchlights to illuminate attacking aircraft and dazzle the pilots. In addition, every warship in the harbor was well equipped with anti-aircraft guns. The ships themselves were surrounded by over 4,000 yards of anti-torpedo nets, designed specifically to thwart aerial torpedo attacks. It seemed a futile task to attack this force with just 30 fabric-covered biplanes. Nonetheless, by mid-October, the swordfish squadrons of HMS Eagle and HMS Illustrious had practiced and trained to a high level of expertise. Cunningham decided to mount the raid against Taranto on October 21st, Trafalgar Day, an auspicious day for the Royal Navy to wreak havoc and confusion upon the enemy. The swordfish were modified with long-range fuel tanks fitted in the rear cockpit in place of one crewman. However, one caught fire during fitting aboard HMS Illustrious, and 2 swordfish were destroyed. They then discovered that HMS Eagle had been seriously damaged by near misses in past battles and needed repair. Before departure, its 5 remaining swordfish were transferred to the fire-damaged Illustrious. There were now only 24 swordfish available, and HMS Illustrious would have to undertake the raid alone. Over the next 3 days, 3 swordfish aircraft were lost during routine patrols. The battle-damaged HMS Eagle had contaminated the aviation fuel tanks with water, causing the aircraft to crash. There were only 21 swordfish left. With so few aircraft, the raid seemed impossible now. The operation was postponed until November. Meanwhile, more reconnaissance flights were conducted over Taranto. 3 Martin Maryland bombers provided intelligence. Their photographs were superior to anything taken previously and were analyzed by the Photo Intelligence Unit at Alexandria. They show that the battleships and heavy cruisers were still moored at the Mar Grande. The lighter cruisers and destroyers were aligned with their sterns to the quay of the Mar Piccolo. The pilots of HMS Illustrious studied the photographs carefully. Cunningham decided to attack the battleships in the Mar Grande with torpedoes, and the other ships in the Mar Piccolo with bombs. The swordfish were armed with 18-inch torpedoes. The average depth of water in the Mar Grande was 50 feet, so they were set to run at a speed of 27 knots at a depth of 31 feet. This would allow them to pass under the anti-torpedo nets, which were known to extend to a depth of 24 feet. On November 11th, virtually every ship of the Royal Navy's Mediterranean Fleet was at sea, as well as several merchant convoys sent to confuse Italian naval intelligence. During the evening, HMS Illustrious, accompanied by 4 cruisers and 4 destroyers, arrived off the Greek island of Cephalonia.